Hi guys, happy Thursday. Today we are going to be working back in your poetry packet. So yesterday you took a break and we're working on writing your own poems, and today we're going to move back into that poetry packet to do a little bit of annotating there. So our I can statement is shifting today. I can understand why two images or ideas are brought together and what they share. I'm going to preface this ahead of time that this is a little bit of a trickier task than I've given you in the past. That being said, like most things in poetry, there's really not a right or a wrong answer. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to go through some examples in your poetry packet, but just know that whatever you choose to do, as long as I see that there was effort and you really tried to make a connection between two different things, you're not going to lose points. Okay. So in poetry, the author often compares images or ideas to each other, right? They take two things and they compare them to each other, finding similarities. To figure out why the author is doing this, you can ask yourself three questions. Number one is kind of the obvious one. Why did the poet put these two images next to each other? Number two, why are these images or ideas brought together? And then number three, what do they share? So why would they, again, have been put next to each other? So we're going to do this together. This is an example in your poetry packet, so I just ask that when you go to do your independent work that you don't reuse this one. But we're going to start by just reading it together. So this is called Kid in the Park by Langston Hughes. Lonely little question mark on a bench in the park. See the people passing by. See the airplanes in the sky. See the birds flying home before dark. Home's just around the corner there, but not really anywhere. So that's it. That's the end of the poem. And so when I was thinking about, two images that they were comparing, I looked at the title, right? Although we've talked about this, that a lot of times the title gives away meaning of the poem. And then I looked at that just this first line, this lonely little question mark, and I felt like the author was comparing a child in the park to being a question mark. So those were like the two images that I chose, question marks and kid in the park. This was my image one, and this was my image two. I'll note that so that you guys know that that's what I did. So then what I did was I just kind of went through and I talked about what they meant at different parts in the poem. Okay. So a question mark we know asks questions, right? And when we look up here, we see this happening in the poem, right? This question, question, question. And so then I related it to how does it relate to this poem? The kid is sitting on the bench alone. Maybe he wishes he could ask someone for help, right? Going back up here to the top. That's how I know that. Okay. Second part, he doesn't have answers, and he doesn't have a home. He has no one to answer his questions. Or if we look up here, home's just around the corner there, but not really anywhere. Right. So I'm thinking maybe he has a physical home, but he doesn't have anyone to go home to answer his questions. Right. And that's why he's asking all these questions in the poem. And then lastly, a question mark can be a sign of confusion. Right. So relating that back to the poem, he sees other people, but he doesn't say anything, right? See the people passing by, see the airplanes in the sky. So clearly, oh, did not mean to do that. Clearly, there are people around, and he's not saying anything. So if you look for image one, I really took like the literal meaning of question marks, right? A question mark asks a question. You use a question mark when you don't have answers, and a question mark can be a sign of confusion if you're not understanding. On this side, with the kid in the park, I really tried to look at what is this poem saying, and how do these two things relate, right? How does this image of a question mark relate to this kid in the park? So you still want to think about the big picture, right? You want to ask, what is this poem really saying? This is just another way to do that, right? Because this is really telling me what this poem was actually saying by using images. So again, I just want to really emphasize this literal meaning of a question mark, right? Like you could Google this and say, what is a question mark? And it would tell you it asks a question, it's a sign of confusion. And then this is where I tried to analyze, like, why would he have used this image to represent a child, a kid in the park, right? Why would he have put a question mark to represent a child in the park? So, your goal today, these are the questions if you want to copy them and paste them into your poetry packet. You're going to be asking, what is this poem really saying? And you're going to fill out this chart, same thing that I did, image one and image two. And so, I want to go through just a couple to give you some ideas of like what you could use. So, and again, you can use these. It's That's fine. So this is winter poem. It says, once a snowflake fell on my brow, and I loved it so much, and I kissed it and was happy, and I called its cousins and brothers, and a web of snow engulfed me, and I reached to love them all, and I squeezed them, and they became a spring rain, and I stood perfectly still and was a flower. So the author, she is comparing herself, right, almost to a flower. So you could say your image one could be a flower, and your image two maybe could be a person, right? Those are the two things that are being compared, because she's becoming a flower. You could also talk about, sorry guys, um, you could also talk about the snowflake, right? The snowflake was being compared to a person. The songs typically have a lot of images. So like champion, brave, roar, all of those are going to have a lot of images that are being compared. So this would be a good place for some of you to start if you're struggling. Like this one, Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. She's saying starting at the blank page or staring at the blank page. I'm sorry. So maybe she's comparing the blank page to her journey, right? So what is a blank page, and then how does it relate to the song? So you could use that as one. If you're struggling to get started, just going through a couple more. The Road Not Taken, right? Like he talks about like two separate paths, right? Like two roads diverged in a yellow wood, right? So he's talking about two different roads. Um, and then he's talking about a traveler, right? So maybe why does he compare two roads to a traveler? Um, that is one you could use. This is the one that I did, so I'm asking that you don't use this one. Unless you have something other than the question mark relating to a kid in the park, then you could use it. That would be fine. But yeah, guys, there's a lot in here. Um, like sorry, so I was just skimming through this one. This 1 inch tall one could be another one. You could use all of them. This 1 inch tall one could be one. So he's comparing height, his actual height, um, to a bunch of different things in here, right? So you could talk about this, his height and how he compared it to different things. I'm going to die as another example, right? He's comparing death to gym class. Right, they're talking about running and the cold gym floor. So what is he talking about there? Um, Comparing the bed, like he's hiding in the bathroom. So comparing hiding or fear to the bathroom. So guys, there's a lot of different things that you can use in here. Um, but I know that this is definitely like a harder, more abstract task. So again, I just want you to try your best. Um, and again, it doesn't have to be the right answer, right? This is how you are interpreting the pictures and the images in this poem. So if you have questions, please let me know. I have a couple meetings this morning, so I'm not going to be able to make office hours, but I will be on from probably like 12:30 to 2 o'clock, so I can help at any time then. So just shoot me an email in the morning or hop out of office hours in the afternoon if you need me. I look forward to hearing from you guys.